Good morning, fourth graders. Here we are. We've made it through Unit 8, and now we're going back to Unit 5. Unit 5 is all about measurement. We're going to be looking at the metric system and the customary or standard system. This unit can get a little bit confusing, but we're just going to do our best and try to go slow with it. It starts out looking at a unit of length. Looking at these words, what do you think? Do you think we're going to start with the metric system or with the regular system? We call it customary or standard that we use in the United States. If you look at these words on the screen, you probably see the word meter a lot. There it is. I see meter here, 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 and here, all over the page. When you see the word meter, you know that you are in the metric system. And the metric system, just a reminder, is the system that is used throughout the world. A lot of people who live in the United States aren't as familiar with this system, but it really is important that you learn it because you'll definitely need it in your traveling life and probably in your professional life as well. So here we are looking at parts of a meter. So this is not a full meter. A meter stick is like those big sticks that we have in the classroom. I don't know if you remember from when you've had to measure things. They're like, if you put your hands out to your sides, they are pretty much from one fingertip to the next fingertip. So a meter is pretty big. It's bigger than a yard. So find 1 millimeter on your strip. What objects are about 1 millimeter? Notice that the abbreviation for millimeter is mm. Okay, so millimeters. I see some abbreviations off here to the side. mm, cm, dm, and m. So I see right away that mm is at the top. That is our tiniest little measurement of length that we're looking at today. So it's just one of these little spaces. And I'm sure you remember whenever we're looking at length, just like fractions, things like that, we're looking at the hop in between the two marks. We're looking at that space. So that is 1 millimeter. What do you guys think? What objects are about 1 millimeter wide? I wonder if my lead on my pencil is about 1 millimeter wide. Yep. So you could say pencil lead. You can kind of come up with a bunch of ideas, but it would be very, very thin things, very small. Then we're going to move on to the centimeter. So you can see that the centimeter is abbreviated cm. We had mm for millimeter. And if I look at this, the centimeter is listed down here below the millimeter. So the millimeter, I was seeing 10, 20, 30, 40. I was counting by tens on the millimeter row. On the centimeter row, I'm counting by ones here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is one of the reasons we do fractions before we do length, because this is probably going to seem familiar to you when we had different denominators. So you could think of this millimeter line as having a denominator of tenths, and then the millimeter hundredths, and then the centimeter tenths. All right, so the space between those that full hop, the space between the lines, that's the length of a centimeter. So our question asks us how many millimeters are in 1 centimeter. And if you're looking here, I'll even circle that to make it really obvious. 1 centimeter is the same thing as 10 millimeters are in 1 centimeter. Notice that I can abbreviate. That's totally fine. I just have to know the correct abbreviation. Let's look at number 3. What objects are about 1 centimeter wide? So maybe my pencil eraser, let's check it out. It's actually, I'm looking between the 80 and 90 there. It's a little bit thinner, but it would be I think it would be fine guess. Ooh, maybe my highlighter cap. Let's check. Yeah, that looks more like it. I'm going to say highlighter cap. And you can be thinking about some things around you that might be 1 centimeter wide. Oh, another thing to think about is your finger. My thumb is probably too wide for a centimeter. Yeah, but what about my finger, my pointer finger? If I look at the space between the side of the fingernail to the other side, it's about 1 centimeter. My pinky might be, I could squish my pinky all the way up in there. So you could also look at your fingers. If you have your book, I really want you to open it up and play around with this a little bit, just so you can get an idea of exactly what a centimeter looks like. Okay, then this one, number 4, is a decimeter. We don't really use this one as much in real life, but it is important that you know it because it comes up a lot in your schoolwork. It'll come up in 5th grade and in middle school. So let's check it out. Decimeter, it's the one underneath centimeter up here. And a decimeter has, look at that, there's no number in its row. Nothing, 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 a bunch of blank space until you get all the way over here to 1. So I'm going to go ahead and circle that whole section actually. I'll go ahead and zoom in there for you. If this is 1 decimeter, then the question is asking how many centimeters are in 1 decimeter. You could also think about the word equivalent that we use during fractions. How many centimeters are equivalent to 1 decimeter? And there it is, it's right there, it's 10, so 10 centimeters. And then I could ask how many millimeters, and you would probably say 100, and you would be right. Okay, so 10 centimeters are equivalent to 1 decimeter. Now they have shown us here a meter all folded up. So you have to imagine this line stretched back out. So it's been folded and squished, kind of like an accordion style, then stretched out. It would be a full meter. Again, if you take your arms and put them at your sides and point them out, the distance between your fingertips is going to be about a meter, just to give you an idea what a meter would be. So how many decimeters do we think are in 1 meter? Well, if we look back up at the top here, we know that the decimeter was from here to here, right? It was that. So if I bring my fingers down, I see that that's 1 decimeter. How many of these lines are in 1 meter? Now, if you have any experience with the metric system, or maybe you're just kind of starting to notice, metric numbers always end in 0 when we're converting or when we're comparing, at least at the 4th grade level. So I'm seeing a lot of tens, hundreds, things like that. So let's see if I can count. I'm going to use my highlighter to count carefully. So here is 1. That's 1 decimeter. Oh, I forgot this highlighter doesn't work very well. Let me switch colors really quick. Okay. 1. Now 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How many of you thought it would be 10? Yeah, predicted it would be 10. If you're starting to notice that the decimal system works a lot in tens, hundreds, and thousands. So there are 10 decimeters. The correct abbreviation there is DM in 1 meter. So you could say 10 decimeters are equivalent or equal to 1 meter. All right, that was on page 177. And now I'm moving on to page 178. Sorry if I forgot to tell you the page number before. So here we have some real world pictures, and we're talking about what we think would make the most sense, what unit we should use in the metric system. So if you are going to be measuring a person, their height, we have to think about what unit would make the most sense to measure with. Now, you could choose a larger unit, but then it would be really hard to be specific. For example, if I chose meters to measure everybody's height in, everybody would probably be, all the 4th graders would probably be 1 meter plus some of another meter. So that wouldn't really be the best because it wouldn't be very specific. Can you think of a unit that would be more specific than a meter? Centimeter would probably be the best. Now, this is one of those things. Remember in vocabulary when we talk about how you want to try to find the answer that's the best answer and try to kind of turn off that part of your brain that wants to argue things? This is a really good example of that. Your brain, if you have a brain like me, might be thinking, but wait, you could totally use millimeters and it would be even more specific, or you could definitely use meters. But we're trying to find that one that is the easiest and gives us the most specific without being crazy hard to count. So centimeter would be your best choice there out of the choices given. Of course, you could definitely use other units. Okay, let's look at number 7. Here we have a flight from Chicago to New York, a straight shot there. So we're looking at the distance between 2 cities. This one we actually didn't talk about on the previous page. but this one would be the one you would use. Basically, instead of miles, you're looking at kilometers. Kilometers, there are 1 kilometer is shorter than 1 mile, and we can look more in depth at that later. But anything that's really big, you're going to be thinking kilometers, and we'll learn in a little bit how many meters are in a kilometer. Sneak peek, it's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. Okay, then we have number 8 here. This is really specific. We're looking at how wide this quarter is. So again, of course, I could probably use centimeters. I'm going to use this to show you. Like here's centimeters, 0, 1, 2, and a half. But I would want to be even more specific. I would even want to use those tiny little lines because a quarter is not a large object. So the best choice here is going to be a millimeter. And there I'm demonstrating how you can use the abbreviation. Okay, here we have a track for runners. Going around a track, runners would not necessarily measure their distance in kilometers, even though they could. I mean, I'm sure a lot of runners do run more than 1 kilometer, but we want to be more specific. We don't want to be centimeters or millimeters. So what do you think would be like a nice specific one for runners? Meters. Swimmers too. All of you on swim team, you could tell me if you measure in meters, but I would not be surprised if you do. Okay, number 10, we have a pencil. This one really, you could go either way. If you feel like centimeters would be a good one, you could do centimeters, or you really could do millimeters as well. Again, the point of this is just thinking about what would be the best choice, but we all know that you really could use more than one choice for pretty much any of these. Here we have a guy who's going to vault over a pole, and we're looking at the distance from the floor up to the pole. So on this one, I would say decimeter, because remember that decimeter is about that big. But again, we don't use decimeters much in real life. So if you didn't want to use decimeters, you could probably use meters to check that out as well. If you have a meter stick or any kind of a ruler at home with metric on it, I would really advise you to get it out and kind of measure a few things around the house, because that will really help you figure out these real life situations a bit better. Here's the distance between the floor and a doorknob. So we're going to go with centimeter or decimeter on that one. And then we have the distance between the street and the front door. On this one, I would say meter would probably be the best. I kind of went through those pretty quickly just to give you an idea, but I highly encourage you to see if you can measure some things around the house and decide what units you think would be better.